Hi, I'm Nate Seberg, and this is One Day Ahead. Welcome to Of Mice and Men, Chapter 4. If you're a teacher, check out onedayahead.com, where you will find all of this series, videos about teaching it, and a full unit. Finally, this is not a spoiler-free video. Fair warning. But if you're good to go, then rub your back and get out of my room as we dive into Of Mice and Men, Chapter 4. So in 1, we met our guys. In 2, we met the ranch hands. In 3, we killed the dog. So now it's time to meet Crooks. Steinbeck establishes early in this chapter that Crooks lives apart from the other workers. It's the 1930s, and if you've been paying attention in history class, you know that we are firmly in the Jim Crow era. If you're unfamiliar, this is a time when state and local laws enforcing racial segregation were widespread. Schools generally focus on laws in the South of the United States because that's where they were the most egregious and entrenched, but in the 1930s, even now liberal states like California had plenty of segregation laws and plenty more segregationist traditions and social expectations. That's why Crooks has his own space. He's proud, aloof, and the social contract says that if he stays out of the bunkhouse, the white workers will stay out of his space. But you know who missed that little social memo? Lennie. As Crooks is putting on medicated oil on his back, Lennie appears in his doorway. The other men have left to visit a brothel. Susie's obviously not gonna go to Tacky Clara's, what with her doll lamps and venereal diseases. We have standards. And Lennie is lonely. When he appears in the doorway, Crooks stiffens, saying he has no right to be here. Lennie keeps saying, "I'm here because I saw your light." Crook asks what he wants, and Lennie is like, I saw your light. And Crooks is like, but why are you here? And Lennie is all, because your light is on. They're really not connecting. Finally, Lennie just walks in and sits down. We learn that the only other guy who stayed back is Candy, who's working away with a pen and pencil figuring. Now, Lennie is sworn to secrecy regarding the plan to buy a ranch, acquire rabbits, and tend to them. So when Crooks asks, figuring, what's Candy figuring about? Lennie shouts, about the rabbits? God, I love Lennie. So they begin talking about the ranch, but then Crooks takes the conversation to actually a pretty awful place. Crooks realizes that with Lennie's disability, he can say anything to him. Crooks laughed again. A guy can talk to you and be sure you won't go blabbing. George knows what he's about. Just talks and you don't understand nothing. Crooks is excited about his newfound power and he immediately uses it to mess with Lennie. Suddenly his voice dropped to a near whisper. He asks, suppose George don't come back no more. Suppose he took a powder and he just ain't coming back. What do you do then? Lennie's attention came gradually to what had been said. What? He demanded. I said, suppose George went to town tonight and you never heard of him no more. Crooks pressed forward some kind of private victory. Just suppose that, he repeated. Lennie starts to comprehend the enormity of this statement. Fear begins to creep in and Crooks's face lighted with pleasure in his torture. He continues, want me to tell you what'll happen? They'll take you to the booby hatch. They'll tie you up with a collar like a dog. Suddenly, Lennie's eyes centered and grew quiet and mad. He stood up and walked dangerously towards Crooks. Who hurt George? He demanded. So this is a little bit too much fun for Crooks. He backs off and pivots, saying, well, then you'd be alone, and that's what it's like every day when you're black, so thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So while Crooks is right, bigotry and hate have left him isolated, I don't really buy that he was like teaching Lennie an important lesson in social justice. You know, he was just simply being cruel. Next, Lennie brings the conversation back around to the rabbits. Pretty much every conversation with Lennie is eventually heading back to the rabbits, and this time Crooks hears the full pitch. Ranch, berry patch, alfalfa, rabbit hutch, the whole deal. And here Crooks speaks from experience. I've seen hundreds of men come by on the road and on the ranches with their bindles on their backs and that same damn thing in their heads. Hundreds of them. They come and they quit and go on, and every damn one of them's got a little piece of land in his head, and never a goddamn one of them ever gets it. Just like heaven. Crooks is jaded. Like all the characters we meet, he is lonesome, bitter, and weary. But after listening to Candy and Lennie insist that they really are 1 month away from having this money, even he is seduced. Just like the men on the riverbank reeling from being run out of weed, just like Candy after the death of his dog, the promise of this future paradise takes root. Crooks reached around and explored his spine with his hand. I've never seen a guy really do it, he said. I seen guys nearly crazy with loneliness for land, but every time a whorehouse or blackjack game took what it takes. He hesitated. If you guys would want a hand to work for nothing just as keep, why, I'd come and lend a hand. I ain't so crippled I can't work like a son of a bitch if I want to. So it's here that Lululemon turns up again. This is Curley's wife. Any of you boys seen Curley? Again, how big is this freaking ranch? There are only 6 characters in this whole book. How can you not find each other? Lulu glances around and sizes up this lot, Lennie, Candy, and Crooks, and concludes that the others went to a brothel and, quote, left all the weak ones here, she said finally. It's mean, but it's not totally wrong. Now, the guys are scared of her, scared of the danger she represents and the power she holds. One wrong word from her will be trouble from her Chihuahua husband or worse. They ask her to leave, but she doesn't want to. It turns out that she's lonely and married to an idiot. Well, I ain't giving you no trouble. Think I don't like to talk to somebody every once in a while? Think I like to stick in that house all the time? And from there, she is off. Girl just wants to talk, and here is an audience. She tells them she could have been somebody. She could have been a star. What do I care? You bindle bums think you're so damn good. What do you think I am, a kid? I tell you, I could have went with the shows, not just one, neither. And a guy told me he could put me in the pictures. She was breathless with indignation. She goes on to insult the men, and it's not totally clear why, really, except that she wants company, belonging, maybe, and they're cutting her out, telling her to leave. She calls them bindle stiffs, which I like, and the N-word, which I don't. She also asks what happened to her husband's hand. They lie and say it got caught in a machine. Then her eyes fall on Lennie. Suddenly she said, "Where'd you get them bruises on your face?" Lennie looked up guiltily. "Who, me?" "Yeah, you." Lennie looked to Candy for help, and then he looked at his lap again. "He got his hand caught in the machine," he said. Curley's wife laughed. "Okay, machine. I'll talk to you later." Crooks has been silent up to this point, but now he pipes up, demanding she get out of his room. And here things get scary. She whirls on Crooks, confident in her complete power. A white woman at this time need only say the word for Crooks to be killed. "You know what I can do to you if you open your trap?" Crooks stared hopelessly at her. Then he sat down on his bunk and drew into himself. She closed in. "Do you know what I can do?" Crooks seemed to grow smaller, and he pressed himself against the wall. "Yes, ma'am." "Well, you keep your place then. I could get you strung up on a tree so easy it ain't even funny." So that's terrible and completely true. Lulu finally leaves. The guys return from the brothel bar and everyone heads toward bed. As they shuffle out, Crooks calls out, "Candy." "Huh? Remember what I said about hoeing and doing odd jobs?" "Yeah," said Candy, "I remember." "Well, just forget it," said Crooks. "I didn't mean it, just fooling. I wouldn't want to go to no place like that." The guys troop out, Crooks goes back to his medicine oil, and that's chapter 4. So if we really want to understand this book, we gotta get deeper than just plot. Let's do a little analysis. So I'm bummed out by Crooks. After Lennie blunders into his room, Crooks comes to realize that here, maybe for the first time ever, is finally someone he can dominate. Crooks has been at the bottom rung of the ladder for so long, and the minute he gets some power, he uses it to hurt. Lennie's intellectual disability makes him acutely vulnerable, and Crooks doesn't hesitate. His immediate instinct is to torture, and he does it simply for fun. And through one lens, I get it. Crooks here has been subject to abuse his whole life. Society has taught him well, I'm sure. But I think this interaction is bigger than that. Here, Steinbeck is again showing us what he believes about human nature. Through this and other interactions, Steinbeck shows that exploitation of the weak by the strong is foundational to human nature. It is something that happens at every level of society. It transcends race, as we see with Crooks, gender, as we see with Lululemon, and class, as we see with the boss in chapter 2. There is no empathy here, no humanity, no camaraderie. This is not a story where my pain helps me see and better understand your pain. This isn't a story where workers must unite in a common cause against the unsympathetic, out-of-touch owners with a vested interest in keeping the poor man down. This is a book where everyone is abused and everyone is the abuser, where we pour ice water on each other's dreams and where the strong do what they will and the weak suffer what they must. In short, no characters show open, unopportunistic love, except Lennie and George. Their bond is special and foreign in this hard world. Finally, sticking with Crooks for a minute, I'm interested in his progression. When he hears about the dream, He goes from hostile incredulity to so seduced that he would work for free just to be there, then back to, never mind, I wouldn't even want to go even if it were real. That is a serious boomerang of a journey. So what do we make of that? Well, the first two steps are easy. We have seen them before. The idea of a worker's paradise is the antithesis of this hard-scrabbled world. So I get skepticism and denial, and I get the seduction that breaks through, even after he pours scorn on the idea for like 3 paragraphs. I can understand that journey. But then why the reversal? Why does he go back? Why at the end does he say, I wouldn't want to go to no place like that, when clearly he would? Well, the answer is Lulu. I think it's no accident that him being drawn into the dream coincides with the breakdown of the rigid social norms. At the start of chapter 3, Steinbeck, 4? Yeah, we're on 4. At the start of chapter 4, Steinbeck spends a lot of time on the social rules of this ranch. He establishes that Crooks is not without at least some social rights. He has his space, his room, and no one is allowed in, just like he's not allowed into the white bunkhouse. But Lennie has no idea about these norms, even when he's explicitly told them. He breaks right through, paving the way for Candy to do the same thing. And with this specific cocktail, a one-handed elderly rancher, an intellectually disabled man, and a black ranch hand with a twisted back in this place and with no other characters to enforce the norms, Crooks finally finds the freedom to dream of a better place and a better life. But then comes Lulu, and their interaction is just terrible. She has her own baggage, I'm sure, with her own loneliness to contend with. That's next chapter. But when Crooks defies her, saying, I had enough, he said coldly, now you just get out and get out quick. And Lulu, heavy air quotes here, puts him in his place by threatening a murder which she could easily bring to pass. The real world comes crashing back down on Crooks. He remembers the score, remembers where he stands within this society. He backs down from Lulu, drawing in, and then in the final lines of the chapter, he protects himself emotionally by deciding he never wanted what he could never have had in the first place. And that's chapter 4. Thank you for watching. Next episode, we head to chapter 5, where Lennie takes up hairdressing, Lulu gets a backstory, and everyone sleeps in the hay. All that and more next time on One Day Ahead.